Emmy nominee Thomas Middleditch, Silicon Valley, HBO's great comedy series, and comedy series nominee. How did you? I mean, you know, the last 2 years we've seen Silicon Valley at the Emmys, writing, directing, comedy series everywhere. It just hasn't broken into acting races, and you were the first man to do it right away. Season 3. How was? I mean, was it expected at all? Were you even paying attention? How did you find out? All that good stuff.
Well, yes, we are notorious Emmy Award losers that we hold in quite high prize at the organization. Am I coming in pretty choppy? I'm using the hotel's internet. Now I'm good.
No, you're good.
And then as for me and like the nomination, yeah, total surprise. I wasn't expecting it at all. Yeah, it came out of left field.
What about your cast? How did they react at all? Were they
They
sending
were
you
like,
text?
"What? Him? Unbelievable!" Yeah, I just got a lot of hate mail from my cast. No, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. I'm happy the show as a whole has been got the nod as well. So it's cool. It really is cool. It's a team effort. It's always nice to get a little sort of little bit of recognition, but I'd be more than happy if this was all it was. This is cool.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that was one of the highlights of the nominations announcement for me was seeing that happen because it's the show has been getting such great praise and has gotten it from the Emmys, but as Ralph said, the acting is where it hasn't. The Emmy voters hadn't woken up to it yet. So hopefully this leads to more in the future. The episode you submitted was The Empty Chair, episode 5 of this year. What led you to choose that one as your episode submission?
Well, to be honest, I think in the package since the show's been nominated, I guess they get whatever 6 episodes or something, or 8 episodes, and in that is another one of my favorites. Although I think it's called Bachmanity Insanity. That's like with the face plant and all that kind of stuff. There's some good moments in that, but in some of the other episodes, either Richard is kind of like he's either a B story or kind of doesn't have enough. What led me to do The Empty Chair is like that is very much kind of Richard the character's desires laid out in front of him. The seat is open again, and he desperately wants it to be him, and then he not only falls on his own sword, but like takes his sword out, puts it on the ground, and then slowly lowers himself onto it. That's the episode with him running his mouth to the reporter and just completely digging his own grave. How many metaphors can I use that are quite grim? But yeah, that's what led me to it. Is like the other little bits that are my favorite bits throughout the season are kind of included in the show package, but that's the episode that is really kind of about Richard's journey, I feel.
You know, and in that episode we saw a lot of really great. Well, actually, the whole season we've seen a lot of really great new stuff from you that we haven't really seen too much in season past. I mean, you've done it, but I'm mainly talking about the physical comedy. I mean, you know, at that last scene you had where you were introducing yourself to your new employees from around the world, and you sit on the CEO chair and then tumble over. But then you had the episode where you went on the date and you fell down the stairs. You know, you've got the one you were just talking about where your hands slip out from under you on the desk. Seemed like there's just a lot more physical comedy that you've been able to do this season. It reminded me, and I think that's why I love the show so much, is because it does implement stuff that we don't see as often. I mean, one of my favorite shows of all time is Three's Company, and it's because of John Ritter's physical comedy, and then you this season reminded me a lot of that, which is why I loved it. And could you talk a little bit about, like, was it your idea to bring more of that in there, or was it, the writers that were bringing it in?
I mean, in the end, the writers brought it in. It's been after a few years of me probably trying to squeak it in here and there. Like, I think anyone who knows me from like UCB improv live comedy world probably expects me to be pretty hammy. Like like I'm pretty broad when it comes to that kind of stuff. But you know, the character of Richard and the tone of the show is much more subtle. And to be honest, I think that works in the favor of physical comedy, because if it's super wackadoodle, sometimes physical comedy just sort of feels like par for the course. Not to say that it can't be good if it's a super wacky thing, but what's been nice is in these moments that we found in the third season, they kind of stand out a little bit more, and because it's all a bit more contained, a smaller thing can happen to seem kind of crazier. So yeah, I've loved it, regardless of whether it's where it came from. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gives me something to do, because a lot of the seasons, well, a lot of the episodes and stuff, everyone gets to be funny, and then I have to come in and be like, guys, we gotta get back to work, you know. and everybody's saying these like funny jokes, and I'm like, yeah, let me do something. So I'm happy that at least I got to contribute to the comedy meter this time around.
When we talked with one of your co-stars a couple months ago, Zach Woods, and what's really interesting about talking to him was talking about pieces that he improvised. The only thing is that he doesn't watch the show. And so, like, whenever we would bring up something that we liked, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm glad that made it in. We improvised that."
Yeah.
And I'm wondering. I'm guessing because a lot of the people on the show have that background in things like UCB, like you and Zach have. Is there a personal favorite thing that you've improvised that actually made it in, and you were like, "Oh, I'm really happy that made it in"?
Ooh.
It doesn't have to be this season. It could be from the first two as well.
Well, you know, my approach to improv in regards to like film and television is different than on stage. Like on stage, it's like, you know, without selling out the scene or the bit or whatever, like anything to get a laugh kind of thing. But you know, because in film and television, you're playing a character. I can't stand when improv sort of feels like you can see actors trying to like throw in hilarious lines. So I really try and make sure it's from the character. And Richard isn't that pithy. He's not like, yeah, like, you know, like he's a bit more nervous and in his own head. But all that said, like I'm not trying to rewrite the script or anything. I'm just trying to add a little bit of something onto it. I really liked this last season, the scene with Richard and Winnie, the Tabs versus Spaces episode. And how he, you know, he's like trying to say there's nothing wrong. You know, I'm fine with spaces. It's totally fine. And he goes on that rant about whatever Hitler and the Nazis and all that. That's me. That's them letting me sort of take the ball and run with it. And I was happy that not only that they kept some of that in. I think they assembled it to make it even bigger from like multiple takes. Like I love that too, of just like seeing him just completely spiral, and they kind of added more improv from various takes to make it even more insane. I that shows that they kind of, you know, value the comedic, I guess, experience that we're bringing to it, which is like, it's always nice, you know. It always sucks when you run up against directors or showrunners or something who are just like, just say the line. You're like, but I've been doing it for a while. I promise, I know what I'm doing. So yeah. Wow, I'm getting into all kinds of different stuff, but I guess that's an example.
Well, running kind of on that same notion of the improv. You know, being on Silicon Valley and not having that instant feedback that you get from an audience as you do an improv, do you ever find that a little bit difficult, or second guessing yourself as to, is this funny enough? Should I do it this way? Because you know right away when you're up on that stage, but here you don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, comedy. You know, I've been thinking about this, but in kind of like comparing it to something else. Because like I still feel with comedy, even if there's not an audience there, I still feel, especially if there's someone else there, to be like, that was funny, right? For them to be like, yes, that was. Like I still feel confident in it. The times when I'm not confident is when it's like when it's not funny. It's like dramatic in some way, you know. That's when I'm going to the director being like, "Is it good?" You know, like, "Tell me it's good. I have no idea. I have no way of knowing." Yeah, it's anything but comedy where just doubt and lack of confidence creeps in. So, but yeah, audience or no, I know what's funny, or at least pretend that I do.
Well, you're the Emmy nominee, so I would assume you do. So you could just that's what's great about this now. You could just use that as a justifier for practically anything now.
It's pretty much how I introduce myself. I am now Emmy Award nominee Thomas Middleditch, and you must pay.
Exactly. That's what what's the guy from Flight of the Conchords? Brett McKenzie. And when he won his Oscar, like he started a thing where every time someone introduces him, they have to introduce him now as Academy Award winner Brett McKenzie.
As he would.
One of my other favorite things about this season was the bringing on of guest star Stephen Tobolowsky, who's just this magnificent character actor, and he was such a highlight of this season. It seemed like he was an amazing person to work with. What was it like? What was it like working with him, and what kind of I guess the word spirit did he bring to the production?
Oh. Well, I mean, it was super cool. I mean, it's always nice to when you meet someone who not only have you seen a ton of their work, but I mean, some of it's probably influenced you quite directly in some ways. It's always nice to sort of when you kind of want to chat about like just anything that's been in their lives up until this point. They're actually game to do it. They're not just like, yeah, Groundhog Day was weird. I don't know. See you later. Like it's like he's willing. We're like willing to kind of just chat and sort of like, I guess, see each other on a more peer level. But it was actually really fun because he brought that kind of energy of experience and also kind of intimidation, which is what Richard needed with that character. You know, like it's intimidating to like hang out with Stephen Tobolowsky just because he's like you're like whoa. You're Stephen Tobolowsky. But yeah, it was great. He had a lot of great stories about just life and comedy, and yeah, it was a trip. It was cool.
Now, you know him as kind of the new CEO of Pied Piper, and your clash with him during the first half of the season. I mean, we saw a lot with Richard in terms of more layers and more depth than we have in previous seasons, because like you said before, he was kind of always the I guess cautious one of the group and trying to steer everybody in one way. But this season, they just gave you so much more. You know, the creators, the writers gave you so much more to play with, and brought Richard into a whole new, you know, different light. Again, with the physical comedy, with letting you improv more. You know, your sometimes dramatic scenes where you have these breakdowns, like the one, you know, even though there were still small things of comedy, but when you were trying to chase her in the car to have the recording erase. And my favorite thing was, mainly because it epitomizes a lot of what I think Silicon Valley is that when you stand behind the car and you're like, I'm not moving until you're gonna have to run me over until you erase that, and then she just pulls out in the front and drives away. Because I feel like sometimes with the show, Pied Piper gets there, and we're all rooting for Richard and the team to get there, and then just something happens where it just steers off in the other direction. Does you know? First of all, how is it like getting so much trust from your writers to do more and to explore different things that may not be as comfortable, like the dramatic side, and then to have these moments where, I mean, do you ever get frustrated too, where you're like, damn it, we were so close there?
Oh yeah, I remember when we first read that Skunkworks episode, and then we're all in the table read, and then we get to the end, and they fall down, they trip, and the Skunkworks thing ends like within that episode. We were all like, oh, we thought it was gonna be Ocean's 11. It's like, no, not at all. I think that's the tightrope that the show walks, because I mean, there are some who would argue that like Richard Hendricks isn't fit to lead any company whatsoever. I mean, the mistakes he's made are so monumental, but he's always given a second chance just because he's a great coder and they managed to pull some miracle out at the last minute. And the line that the show walks is like, how much of that can you push before people are like, I don't buy that whatsoever. Failure is funny until it's just like too impossible and too constant that you can't even root for someone. But yeah, I mean, it's been awesome. I mean, the more opportunities to explore all the different facets of Richard, the better. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like, I don't think Richard is going to have like a Breaking Bad story where he suddenly, gets back at all the people who've wronged him. I think he's had these opportunities to, when he could have used the bots and gotten away with it to bump his users, and he's just gotten a few opportunities where he could be badass, but he doesn't, because he's got a pretty strong moral compass, regardless of what anyone else thinks of his moral compass. He's very strong in his. And but conversely, I remember it's in the first season, I think, maybe even like second episode or something, where like Ehrlich tells him, "Hey, you're a boss now. You're not just a coder. You have to be an asshole." And what's neat about cable comedy is that you can have a very serialized 22-minute show, or I guess it's more than 22 minutes on HBO, but whereas every episode would just sort of restart, now you have not only an arc within a season, but arcs between seasons. And like when you watch it all back to back, like Richard has grown into a boss that stumbles around a lot, but it like compare him now to first season, he's like, you know what, I will stick up for it. I'm gonna do the thing, and I'm probably gonna suck balls at doing it, but like I'm gonna at least try. Yeah, so that's cool.
What you were saying with Richard, trying to be a badass, all I thought of is I guess the first episode of season 2 where they're going to the different VCs. And of course Ehrlich is insulting all of them, and then yours was so perfect. And if you don't do it, and if you don't take it, you're a slut. It just hit all the right notes.
Yeah, that's improvised by mind you, because I was thinking like that's kind of funny you notice that, because Ehrlich is so at one with his dickishness and his boorishness, and he's so at one with like calling people all kinds of terrible things. And then Richard is like, okay, it's working. Okay, well, let me have a crack at it too. And then it's like that nervous thing. It's like when you see someone who's kind of uncoordinated, like work themselves up to like kick a ball, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll kick it, and then they kick spaz in the most insane way. The ball goes flying the other way. They probably trip over themselves, and it's like that pent up energy of like, I'm gonna try, and then totally fuck up.
I do have to ask about one of the scenes from this season that I'm just going to be blunt. What was it like? How did this scene with the horse fucking come around? How did that? Because that was just like, when I was watching that, I'm like, they're really doing this. They're going for it. Okay.
Yeah. We had to top the monkey jacking off with a cybernetic arm from last season. It's one of the benefits of shooting for paid cable is that you can show horse dicks and copious amounts of horse semen spilling out of horse vagina. I mean, it's what we've been dreaming of. You won't get that on NBC, baby. The logistics of it, happy to say, is that was a green screen, so they went out and filmed that separately. So Stephen and I didn't have to watch two horses have sex for 3 hours or whatever it was. Here's something that I think is really interesting, but I don't know. I've kind of already told this story. so I don't know if it's worth it. But like I learned that in horse breeding, I guess at high levels of horse breeding, there's actually three horses involved. There's the mare, there's the like the stud, right? The thoroughbred stud that they want the semen, the juice, and then there's like a warm up. There's a warm up horse that fucks the mare for a little bit and gets it ready. And then when the mare is good and ready, you yank him out of there and throw the thoroughbred in there to like finish the job and let its semen fill up the mare. And then what I love about this story and how cruel it is that the warm-up horse just gets sent out to pasture. So just like they don't have they just have hooves. They can't like finish the job themselves. So their life is actually getting built up to ejaculate, and then just like running around a field being like, oh damn it, you know. I think that, to me, that is actually a perfect metaphor for like Pied Piper. You know what I mean? Like for the guys. They're just constantly warming up and then like live with blue balls.
Constant blue ball.
Yeah,
Full circle. Well, that would make sense why I was in there.
Yeah, it's meta.
It's meta. My last question is, the Silicon Valley this year was the second most nominated comedy series of the year, getting 11 nominations. You guys keep climbing up in Emmy nominations, and again, finally breaking into the acting category. How, I guess on a personal level, how does it feel to know that not only is the show connecting with this large kind of crazed fan base, but with peers within your industry that are, have loved it since season 1 and just keep, awarding it more and more?
It feels good. I mean, I don't think the motivation is like, oh, let's see how much praise and awards we can get. Although, all that means is that the show gets to continue, and that more people watch the show, and that by the end of it, when the dust settles, that's more people to be like, that was a really great show, which feels awesome. I mean, I know a lot of times, especially in TV, you can get a gig and it's sweet, it's paying, and like you're on a TV show, but like no one watches it, and you're stuck on it for like 5 years, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? It's hard to complain because you get paid and you can do what you like to do for a living. But man, when people sort of sing its praises, it feels a lot better. It feels just like, who is it? Is that Sally Fields? You like me? You really like me? I mean, it just feels like that, which is like the total insecure comedian actor that many of us are, of just like seeking approval. So in that respect, it's pretty neat. And if we can win some awards, that just means that the show gets elevated enough so that more people like it, hopefully. And I mean, like if I win, I mean, just expect the next Hollywood tyrant, to be honest.
Are you going to change your name to then Emmy winner Thomas Middleditch, and like on your driver's license, phone bill, everything else?
Yeah, it'll be in quotes, in italics, and underlined in bold.
There you go.
My last question has to. I always find it interesting, how sometimes people get very associated, sometimes uncomfortably closely associated with the characters that they play. Like people just think that they're playing themselves essentially, and of course I know having heard you on other things, like I've listened to you on Comedy Bang Bang and other things. I know you are not Richard by any means, but is there any like similarities that you've seen in the character that's been in the script and you go, oh, that's kind of like me?
Yeah. I mean, in some ways I'm a bit tightly wound. Like I get super obsessed with certain things, and if it doesn't get my way, I have a private hissy fit. What's more interesting is the relationship I have with the other castmates. Like Richard and Ehrlich have a shockingly similar relationship with me and DJ, and same with Richard and Jarrett, like me and Zach. Like Zach kind of can be this like nurturing little mother that I'm like, oh, mom, you know. But also he's super funny and smart that I'm also genuinely impressed by. And you know, me and TJ, I mean, the amount of times he does something that oversteps my personal boundaries, and I get off in a tiff with him, and then he makes up for it in this like incredible way, and I'm like, oh, we are very close friends. You know, that is like a weekly occurrence. You know, we've known each other for a very long time. So that in a way, you know, that's kind of something. I remember in first season we were shooting that scene where like Kid Rock is at the big fancy party, and you know, there's a lot of downtime when they're shooting that thing. And Mike Judge, he comes into where we're all hanging out, and me and Martin are just playing Magic the Gathering, you know, pretty nerdy. And Mike just goes, life imitates art. And then he just turned on his heels and walked away. So I suppose in the nerdy Venn diagram, I'm pretty similar with Richard, although as opposed to programming, I like, you know, Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that.
Well, hey, we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Emmy nominee Thomas Middleditch, italics, bold, underline, and Gold Derby Award nominee for Best Actor this year. Can't forget that. Probably the most prestigious of them all.
It's almost as prestigious as the Robot Wars Giant Nut thing. You know, BattleBots. I mean, BattleBots.
Well, again, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on the success of the show, on the Emmy nominations and your individual nominations. We wish you the best of luck and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks. I'll next time I chat with you, I'll be hoisting my consolation prize, whatever that might be.